All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining today for our LinkedIn Live session with hunters. We are here today to talk about indicators of compromise, what they are, why searching and locating for them is so important and also extremely challenging, and also about a little bit about what we at Hunters here are doing to tackle that challenge. My name is Mike, and I am here with my esteemed colleague, Eric Goldman. I'll let you give yourself a quick little intro about you and what you do at Hunters.
Yeah, definitely. So my name is Eric, and I'm a product manager here at Hunters. I work on the investigation team, so we build tools to make it easier for our users to triage and do threat hunting in the application.
Awesome. Amazing. And for anyone that's in the audience right now, also just want to make a note that if you do have any questions during this presentation, please just drop them in the chat. We've got some Hunters team members waiting in the wings to answer any questions you might have. So don't be shy and feel free to ask. And to start out, Eric, I think it might be nice. Maybe can you just give us a definition? What is an IOC? What exactly is it, and why is it important for security teams?
Definitely. So an IOC is an indicator of compromise. Usually that means it's some sort of indicator that's been used in an attack before. So maybe a different company, a neighbor, a friend, they get attacked, and that attack involves certain IP addresses, certain malicious binaries, domain names, things like that. When they go and investigate that attack and realize what happened to them, they'll then go publish those IOCs and say, hey, if you see this domain name, that corresponds to a command and control server. And so then those IOCs can be useful for other companies to go check in their environment. Hey, can I learn from what happened to this other company by checking my own environment for these indicators?
Nice. And I know that it's not only companies individually that find this, right? It's like there are some also paid services that supply these IOC lists.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, so they come from all sorts of places. Definitely from this attack research, like that's one area, but like an indicator feed, an IOC feed is also a common source. So that's the case. These can come from all sorts of places, but one example that's particularly clever, people set up these like honeypot servers. So it looks like a real server, maybe running exploitable software. They kind of wait for people on the internet to find it and attack it. And then they write down, okay, this IP was used in the attack, this domain name was used in the attack, this binary. And so they're sort of monitoring the drive-by attacks going on in the internet. So yeah, some of them are not directly from that same level of threat hunting, but they come from more kind of automated or systematized processes. On the other end, those can introduce noise, which we can talk about, but there's kind of a spectrum of how valuable it is. If it's something like SolarWinds and there is a deep investigation into it, you can be pretty sure that those IOCs deserve your attention, especially with a lot of open source feeds. You get a lot of noise. Things aren't vetted quite as well. So kind of asymmetrical ways of assembling these IOC lists with different tactics needed for each one.
Right. And so, like, say, for example, you have access to one of these feeds, or you have access to a list of IOCs. Generally speaking, how are security operations centers, security teams, like, how do they find them? Like, you have this list, then what? What's the next step?
Yeah, it's a great question. So there can be pressure from executives from the board to go and look at these IOCs. An example would be something like SolarWinds, where every company had to ask itself, are we affected by this? And that generally got reported all the way up to the board. Other times it's coming from a feed and you're doing something a bit more automated, or that's going to kind of a lower level analyst as part of their day-to-day workflow. And really, the first thing they want to ask is, has this IOC ever been in my environment? If you show me a binary and you say, watch out for this, I want to just see, has it ever been there? If the answer is no, I can pretty much move on. If the answer is yes, I can't stop there. But that's that first query is that search. And what's tricky about that search is it can be a very long time window. So 30 days, 60 days, sometimes even more, could be up to like a year. And it's going to cut across all your log sources. So if you're worried about an IP address, for example, you may need to look across every log source that includes an IP, which generally is like every single log source. So definitely these like wide and broad searches.
Oh yeah. Okay. So once you're doing these wide and broad searches, then I mean, I assume there's also an investigation period afterwards, digging deeper into where those malicious actors went. Did they move horizontally through your organization? Again, like how from locating them, then moving on to something else. How does a team dig in? How do they ensure that they are covering all their bases?
Yeah, definitely. So first thing is you find those hits, you start to drill into the results, and you're looking for context there in terms of how it interacted with your environment. An example would be if you see a malicious IP or potentially malicious IP in your Okta environment, in your identity management tool, that is more worrying than seeing it on an external firewall. Because in that external firewall, maybe somebody went to your www marketing page and they just clicked around with that IP. It's not really that worrying compared to potentially being in your identity management system, where in your worst case scenario, they have penetrated some defenses, or they've gotten in and gotten user access. That's obviously much more concerning. So context really matters here. And one of those contexts can be the log source. Another one is the event type. So network connection denied, much less worrying than obviously a network connection accepted, something like that. Or again, a user login with an IP address. So starting to look at the log line itself, the event type, and then how persistent it's been in your environment. Now, another component to that is false positive detection. False positives, unfortunately, are a huge deal when dealing with IOC feeds, because you often get things that are put on the list. That list gets sent to another list. That list gets sent to another list, and then it goes to you. And it almost launders the source of the IOC, and maybe it wasn't from something that was that confident. And so some interesting ways of doing that. Let's say you look up a binary and it's all over your environment. You have hundreds of thousands of hits. Now, an inexperienced analyst might say, oh my God, we've been completely taken over by this malicious binary. But usually a more experienced analyst will take that as a signal that there might be noise in the IOC feed. Now, if every single computer for every single employee is running this quote unquote malicious binary, maybe it's the case that this wasn't actually malicious and this is just a normal part of their Microsoft laptop. And so that's where things like enrichment, to go look up the binary and see, okay, is this from a known publisher? Or starting to look at the distribution of hits in your environment, that's going to start giving you some signal about how to best investigate.
Yeah, for sure. What would you say are like with these obviously this is a huge problem, right? It's very complex. There's tons of data. Even if you have a list of where these things are, or what they are, where do you look? What are the challenges, right? I assume with a large data, searching through a large data set. I know I've heard you talk about free text searches before, right? Those can be extremely inefficient. What other kind of challenges are we looking at?
Yeah, that's a huge part of it, is having to look everywhere across your environment, in every log source, potentially in every field. That's just a long, complex flow query. Another piece of it is understanding your log sources. So if I tell you, oh, hey, can you go look in your, let's say, CrowdStrike or one of your EDR vendors for this IP address? Often an analyst won't be able to say with confidence, all right, here are all the places an IP address can show up. Now, naively, you might look and say, oh, there's a field called IP address. That must be the end of that story. But for something like CrowdStrike, you got over 1,000 event types. Each event type has its own set of fields. And so often there is a field in there or a few fields in there that you might miss where there's important context. So as a result, analysts need to be really, really familiar with their log sources, how they're structured, and even what certain actions mean. So what does it mean to have a connection denied? You look for a specific Boolean, maybe that Boolean is nested a few levels deep, and if it's false, then it's been denied. If it's true, it's been accepted, something like that. So, there's a lot of weight being put on the analyst to understand their environment, understand how to do query tuning, understand how to do these complex and expensive queries. Then it can take a long time. Then you have to go analyze all the results. So quite a few steps and a lot of context needed by default to be able to handle these cases.
This brings me to my next question, which is, tell us about Hunters, what they're building. Tell us about Hunters IOC Search. We you, us, everyone, what we're all building.
Definitely. So our goal was really to tackle all this. And we started with the search aspect. How do you search across all these different log sources for these large time windows in a way that searches comprehensively across all these different fields without needing the analyst to know every single event type for every single log source? So that was really the first problem what we set out to tackle. And that's really covered in a lot of ways by this new IOC search feature. We spent a really long time as an engineering team figuring out how we can make this as efficient as possible. We leaned on a lot of the proprietary technical systems that we have to work through data, process it, and make it searchable. And we combine that with a lot of the Snowflake best-in-class features to make search really fast. And as a result, we've optimized this now so you get kind of this Google-style search. It's just an open-ended search box, to specify where you're searching. You just give it a time range. You pop in something like an IP address, a domain name, a file hash, and we can do searches over multi-month time windows, usually in just a few seconds. And so getting those results back really quickly to the analyst, and again, doing it in a way that's comprehensive and understands the data that you're searching. And that's one of the advantages of the Hunters content team is we're able to look through all these different data sources, do that mapping and do that upfront work on behalf of the customer. And then the customer only needs to use that Google style search.
It's honestly really, it's kind of a blockbuster feature. It's very, very cool. I've seen it. We're actually going to give a little bit of a demo here in a minute. But can you talk a little bit about the proprietary tech, the optimization process, even if whatever you can share about kind of how is it so fast, right? Like it's the speed is pretty remarkable.
Yeah, definitely. A lot of what we're doing is as data is coming in, we have our own systems to basically process that live. So each time a log line comes into the Hunter system, we're able to run analytics on it, build derived tables, and build kind of secondary indexes. And in this case, what we're doing is we have a mapping where we know all the IOC fields. We're looking in those fields for IOC values, and then we're constructing secondary indexes that the user can search on that are basically materialized in Snowflake and ready to be used. Snowflake also has some very useful features around how it does clustering. There are ways you can kind of tune a table for certain search patterns. And it's a combination of our online processing and log processing technology, plus the long-term storage capabilities and tuning capabilities in Snowflake. But as you can see, there are a lot of different combinations there, a lot of different ways we can structure everything. And the engineering team literally spent months kind of going through and rigorously figuring out, all right, what's the best trade-off between comprehensiveness, speed, cost, and got something really amazing out. I mean, every time we connected to a user's environment and show them just how fast these searches are, we always get a great reaction.
Amazing. Yeah, I think with that, I don't know if you're all set up to maybe share your screen and and give us a little taste. I think obviously everyone loves a live demo, right? Except for the people giving it.
Absolutely.
But no, it really is incredible. I've seen it in action, and you're about to. While you get it set up there, can you obviously searching for IOCs, locating them, investigating them, and eventually responding appropriately is the goal. Like, are there other workflows that this type of functionality would kind of fit into?
Definitely. So a lot of threat hunting use cases start to look like IOC searches, which is a little odd to say, but we'll dig in. A case might be, for example, you're investigating a malicious process. As you're investigating that process, you're looking at the network request that it's making, and it makes a request to a really strange domain name. Starts to maybe look like a C2 server. Your immediate next question is, have I ever seen that domain in my environment somewhere else? So these kind of blast radius searches or these pivots to related entities often look like IOC searches, where you're looking across your environment for a very specific string entity, and you're trying to figure out who else is affected by that. So we see users who are using this tool not just to take an IOC feed and throw it into hunters, but they're also using it as part of their core threat hunting workflow. And nothing to announce today, but there's a lot that we're interested in there and starting to build a roadmap around that manual investigation kind of threat hunting workflow, really incorporating these IOC searches and the data that we're collecting into that.
Amazing. It's you're teasing a bit, but yeah, if you want to go ahead and share your screen, and we can give the people what they want, a quick little demo. And
definitely.
Yeah, go for it.
Let me flip over to our demo environment really fast. So cool, here we are. So this is our demo environment. Wanted to give a little tour here. So the first thing I want to say is this is not just a toy environment. There are 42 terabytes of data in it, and it really does simulate a customer environment that's under a lot of load. So what we're going to see today is actually a pretty realistic view of how IOC search can work. And so what I'm going to do here is come over to the side, go down to IOC search, and I'll set this to the last 60 days. Now, a few things we can look at. One is there's this upload CSV button over here on the right. So we can take CSVs or sort of formatted lists of IOCs. We're basically agnostic to the format. So if it looks like a domain name, if it looks like a file hash, we'll take it and put it in here. We've seen a lot of success with that with users. I've seen IOC searches as large as 700 IOCs coming in here at a time, with still really fast results. So just always thinking about how we integrate into customer workflows. But if you just want to come in here and type something in this case, I'm just going to paste some from the clipboard. And you can see we'll tokenize this and we'll say, okay, you just put in 2 domain names, 3 IP addresses, and a file hash. So we're able to kind of pull all that out. On the time range, we give you some pre-selected fields, but you can go as long as you want. There's no maximum time, and you don't have to start with day. So if you said I want from 3 months ago to 2 months ago, that's totally fine as well. But in this case, I'm just going to select 60 days. So I'll go in here and I'll press search. Now I'm going to search over that 60-day window, and we already have results. So when I said that this was fast, I wasn't exaggerating. Spent a long time on it, and as a result, that query completed in seconds. And we talked before about just how much data is in this demo environment. It is a very real environment. So the first thing you'll notice here, if you scroll down, we have IOCs without findings. So just quick separation to say, you can pretty safely report that these weren't found in the log sources that we searched. And then up here, we see the ones that do have findings. Oops. And what we can do now is start to drill into them. So I'll just pick this one here, this 20.60 IP address. Immediately, we can see that there are results in Windows event logs and CrowdStrike, and we can see the activity over time. The activity over time is really useful because that's going to tell us kind of when this started in our environment, when it ended. That can help also define blast radius, narrow down an investigation into a specific window, or narrow in on cases where there's more activity. Maybe there's a burst of activity for a binary. That may mean it was more active than other days. At any point, if you want to export to CSV, that's an option as well. That's going to allow you to take data out of the platform and slice and dice it in a tool like Excel or in Python notebook, something like that. That said, we have some pretty powerful tools in the platform that we'll get a quick overview of. So here in this grid, we have the data source. So in this case, it's coming from Windows event logs or another row from CrowdStrike. We go over here, you can see where we found the IOC. So in this case, the IP address was found in this IP4 records. But what's interesting is you can see right underneath it, there's another case where we found it in remote address IP4. So we were talking a little bit about how many different event types there are, how asymmetrical they are. So there are different IOCs in different fields. And an analyst doesn't need to know that IPs can be in this field or in that field or lots of other ones, just for this log source specifically. They can just type the IOC and then press enter, and we'll go and search all the right places. Here's the IOC value itself. So that's just the thing we search for. And then here's the event type. So in this case, you can see there's some DNS requests, there's network connections being made. And if we keep going over, we can see the identifier value, which is for our CrowdStrike machines, the agent ID, and for our Windows event logs, the machine name. And this is going to really help us in the follow-up investigation, or kind of as we threat hunt, we can figure out which machines are affected. And actually, maybe we do that right now. What I can do is take this identifier value and just drag it up here like that. And now I'm doing the group by. And you can see, all right, there are 4 machines managed by CrowdStrike with these agent IDs that have touched this IP address. And there are 2 host names or machine names that have been touched in the Windows event logs. And again, that's going to really help us scope and bound the investigation. And we can pop something like this open and start to see exactly what happened. These network requests, these DNS requests, and we can use the event time to basically zoom in and do threat hunting from here.
Amazing. Wow, this is like every time I see it, I'm honestly impressed. Like it's the speed is amazing. Getting the group by is amazing. So congrats to you and the team on building something incredible. We are almost out of time here. So I do just want to quickly say thank you, Eric. This has been super helpful. I've actually learned a bunch just in this talk right now. So thank you for giving us the rundown. For anyone that's watching, of course, you can find us at hunters.ai. There's lots of information. There's a whole video. We have Eric on another video, being his charming self, explaining stuff. So please feel free to reach out. And yeah, thank you all so much for coming today. It's a real pleasure having you here with us. And Eric, always a treat.
Glad to be here.
Awesome. Wonderful. Well, everyone enjoy the rest of your day, and thanks for joining. Take care.
Thanks so much, everyone.